Oh, Don Lemon. Here we go. Oh, and good Morgan. Good Morgan. What a good Morgan indeed. Interesting Morgan. Don Lemon just got arrested. So let's look at that.
Breaking news this morning, federal agents have arrested former CNN host Don Lemon after he entered a church to cover an anti-ICE protest on January 18th.
Now, Lemon's attorney, Abby Lowell, released a statement on Instagram, writing in part, quote, "Instead of investigating the federal agents who killed two peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest, and that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. This unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from many of the crises facing this administration will not stand. Don will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court."
The Trump administration had initially sought to charge Lemon and 7 others, but a magistrate judge only approved 3 of those and rejected evidence against Lemon. It is not clear what charges Lemon currently faces. Last week, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the various arrests and wrote on X, "Listen loud and clear. We do not tolerate attacks on places of worship." So initially, after that magistrate judge rejected the attempt to bring emergency charges against Don Lemon, they appealed to.
And I've been trying to steelman both sides of this in my head. And I was like, I'm really trying my best to steelman the case for Don Lemon. And it's like, yeah, you could really say that he wasn't in charge of any of it, so he's not, really responsible, but he was participating, so it's kind of like that gray area where it's just like, well, how many do you arrest everybody that walked in there? Well, I think they did with January 6th, so I don't really see much of a difference with that, because it's a church service. You shut down the service. It's against the First Amendment. You got the FACE Act. But for Don Lemon, oh man, I had a thought there too. I was trying to steelman his side, but I was just kind of thinking maybe he could stay out of it, because it's like I really was just reporting on it. But it was like there's too much footage of him hanging out with them beforehand. He was buying all them coffee and stuff. It's like you just stumbled upon this. It just seems hokey. But maybe I'll come back to that thought here in a second. I did have a good thought on that.
A higher court, a federal court of appeals, which I think also did not allow them to have an emergency issuance of charges or issuance of a warrant, but they did find the evidence against Don Lemon for violating the FACE Act credible. So I suspect the DOJ, the reason it took longer to arrest him was because they weren't able to get that emergency order, but that didn't mean necessarily that there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. So now he's been arrested. I think it's the right move. We obviously talked about this issue back when it happened. It's pretty clear in the FACE Act that you cannot impede other.
That was the thought I had, because when he was talking to the pastor, or is it the pastor? How does the church work? I'm a dum-dum when it comes to this sort of thing. But when he was talking to the guy that was leading the service, he asked him to leave. He's like, "Would you please leave?" And then Don said, "No, it's part of our First Amendment right." So the fact that Don Lemon wouldn't leave after he had been asked to leave, I think that's going to be held against him pretty hard. I think that's going to be the moment that's probably defining the most.
There's right to worship. He was embedded with and organizing with this group. He was not just following them around with a camera. In some videos, he can be heard chanting along with the protesters. He deliberately interrupted the pastor to interview him, while his interview was basically him just defending the protesters interrupting this church service. And so to me, he was an active participant, and that went beyond journalism, and he became a protester and obstructed those parishioners' right to be there worshiping God.
I mean, I completely disagree. I think this is obstruction
Of course you do.
First Amendment. Don Lemon was actually there documenting the experience. As you've seen Don Lemon as an independent journalist in recent months since he left CNN, he's been out and putting himself in the center of whatever is happening, the most pressing news of the day. And so he was following an organization that he understood where they were gathering and followed them all the way to the church through what he says his account. I guess we'll see how this plays out in court, but he says he was following and documenting. And as people that understand and what journalism is all about, there's somebody who is a leader of a church who's giving a sermon probably about acceptance if it's a Christian church, because that's what the Bible teaches us, to accept people that are different than us. And so the fact that he's also preaching that, but then also running a local ICE chapter, people had questions about what his incentives are. That's a natural question that a journalist would ask. So Don Lemon asking those questions to me is not illegal. Don Lemon following a group of protesters to me is not illegal. And he didn't disrupt the worship by explaining what he's seeing protesters doing. I actually watched the live feed and he was breaking down, like, if you'll see around me, look at this. I'm explaining like a journalist does. And I think now, especially in today's society where we have tons of citizen journalists, because we allow people to take their cameras and tell us what's going on. We don't only accept what the major media outlets, the mainstream media outlets are telling us. That Don Lemon was there trying to figure out what's happening in Minneapolis. There's a lot of people who are trying to figure out
you're reaching. It's being very dishonest if we're really taking that approach. It's just like, oh, it just happened to happen. You just stumbled upon it. Does anybody actually believe that? Like, you do have to be gullible or captured by the ideology.
It's happening in Minneapolis. I mean, in 1 month, 2 people were killed. And at the same time, we've gotten multiple incorrect statements from the federal government.
But he did. The pastor asked him to leave. So that's I think that's going to be the biggest moment in the case. And I wonder, yeah. Don Stinky Hands Lemon.
We've gotten people that have quit the investigation because they were trying to figure out more and get some more dirt on Renee Good's wife and trying to prosecute her instead of looking at if it was a lawful killing of Renee Good. So this whole thing is being handled sloppily. So you would think more journalists would be there telling us exactly what's happening on the ground. And so I think that them putting Don Lemon in custody is ridiculous, and hopefully he gets out soon, because I think that once it starts happening, it really becomes this vendetta situation where President Trump doesn't like you. We don't live in an authoritarian state. So, President Trump has this track record. He doesn't like you and that he comes after you. And he's proven that. And Don Lemon was even fearful of that because he went online and said, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue this crusade against me. And here we are. I think this is embarrassing for our country.
I mean, he was on camera before the group went into the church, before they even got there, and winking to the camera about this operation that they were about to do. So he knew exactly what they were doing.
Wink?
He helped
I don't know
them
if I saw it.
plan this and do it with them.
I mean, I
he was
wouldn't doubt
not
it.
just following along as a cameraman. He inserted himself as a protester. In my opinion, I don't think this is a personal vendetta at all. I think this is actually trying to protect these people who have a right to worship. I mean, the protesters' First Amendment right does not trump the First Amendment right to religious practice, right? That's the fundamental tension here, and that's why the FACE Act covers places of religious worship, because you have to have both of those rights protected at the same time. My right to scream.
Well, and also, too, like, any support that you had before from any of these people, it's just right out the window. So you're just making so many enemies. A lot of this stuff that they do, I'm like, why what's your methodology here? It's like, what's the purpose of this? Do you really think you're going to... everybody's going to be like, you know what? You guys are so right. Shut down the church. We're coming out there with you. We're going to go march.
Doesn't trump that person's right to listen to their pastor give a sermon. And I'm curious, on this Bible point you made about how, well, the Bible preaches tolerance and acceptance, so we can't enforce immigration policy. Is that the argument?
No, I think if you're supporting the administration and specifically working for ICE, President Trump has said some really damning things about specifically Somali people that makes you look at immigrants like they're lesser than. We call people illegal when humans actually can't be illegal. That's a policy
it's a legal
thing.
Term. Illegal alien.
Yeah, but it's a policy. I know, but illegal would be the actual thing that they're doing. People aren't illegal. So the thing that they're doing is illegal, which should be crossing the border.
They're in the
And so
country
this is
illegally.
the way that we're
Their
describing
status
human
is
beings,
illegal.
right?
What are
And
you
humanity tells us
trying
that
to
we don't
say?
treat people like that, especially if you're reading the Bible. And so that would be a natural question, right? That you would say, okay, so how do you justify this and this? Does it make sense? Connect the dot. That's a question to ask a pastor and also a leader of ICE. I don't think that that's a bad point to make, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Don Lemon is covering what's happening and asking a question. And as a journalist, you could like his question or not like his question, but he's allowed to ask these questions because people at home were asking these questions. Wait, the pastor is also preaching the word of what? What is he saying when he's running the ICE locally and knows that 2 people were killed and people feel unsafe and uncomfortable in Minnesota? And there needs to be
hey,
federal
you know
government
what?
attention to the fact that
Under that framework, I can understand what she would be saying, but at the same time, it's just like I don't think that's happening in reality.
the local government is iced out of this, and no pun intended, investigation, and people don't
I
trust.
really
that
try
this is
my
gonna be a
best.
fair
I do.
and flawless investigation to tell
Have
us
to
what
be
the
so
truth is.
dishonest if
They're
you're gonna
concerned
approach
with Don Lemon. And I think
any
that's
of those,
problematic and a huge
theories,
indication
though.
of where the priorities of this administration are, which are not in the right place.
The Bible also tells people to follow the law.
Exactly. But
Okay.
exactly, Don Lemon's allowed to ask those questions. Is my point. He's allowed
Right.
to ask about both of those
But I-
questions.
How about
but-
you
so
do
how
it
do you
after the
justify one
church
over
service
the
is
other?
out when
What I'm
everybody's
getting
coming
at is
out?
that you're saying
Can't you
that
yell at him
the
then? Why do you have to
Bible-
shut down
this
the
guy's
service?
basically a hypocrite, right? That's your argument. He's a hypocrite because he's a Christian and he's a pastor, and the Bible preaches tolerance and acceptance, which
No,
the
'cause
Bible
it was a piece of
teaches
shit
a
move.
lot more
Let's-
than just
let's all
tolerance and
be
acceptance.
honest
I think
about
we
it.
could agree.
Yes.
Right. So
It also teaches follow the law, but it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't teach you to treat people inhumanely who don't follow the law.
who is this pastor treating?
It's not. It's about the
Wow.
ICE interactions. 2 people died, and we're trying to make
Okay.
them. They're killed. They're not worth. Like their
Did this
actions.
pastor kill them?
No, but But are you championing what ICE has done? That's the question at hand? Is he championing what ICE has done in his community? Does he think this is the right way forward? Does he think that they were overly aggressive in killing Renee Good? Does he think these are questions that you could ask? I mean, you support ICE. Justify this. Are you on the side of Kristi Noem, who's going to call them a domestic terrorist? I mean, that's what your leader is telling you. That's the appropriate term. She's running ICE, right? Do you align with that? These are regular journalist questions.
Not while the guy's preaching a sermon.
I'm
Yeah.
just telling you, Don Lemon shouldn't go to jail for that. I don't think that is absurd. He was literally documenting and telling us what's going on and asking questions like journalists should. I don't think that he should be behind bars in any way. I think this is frivolous, and hopefully his lawyer gets it thrown out. That's my perspective. President Trump raised some eyebrows with his comments.
This
about
is a gray area too, because it's like we know he did it, but at the same time, it's like you really can't. You don't really have any rock solid thing to throw on him. So I don't know. I can kind of see both sides on this. I hate to say it,
housing during his cabinet meeting.
but if we're gonna be the adults in the room, be honest, like, bro, we know what you were doing.
Next, stick around.
I got up at 5 a.m. this morning to do an airport run. Who doesn't love doing that on their Fridays? But it's now 7:30 a.m. and I opened the news, and what did I see? Good Lord! Don Lemon has been arrested by federal agents and is facing 10 years in prison. Just think about starting your Friday off like
Well,
that.
obviously he won't do.
Don
10,
Lemon
but
has been arrested by
holy
the
hell.
FBI and is facing
That was
10
way more than I thought it'd be.
years in prison.
I was thinking like a year.
Every single like on this video is one time in which Don
that's heavy.
cannot drop
That's-
the soap. That Don will not be allowed to drop the soap because he would enjoy it too much. What a wonderful Friday to start. Now, here are all the details. By the way, thank you all for being so supportive this week. Everything's been going incredibly. I'm thankful for all of you. Don Lemon arrested by the Trump administration over his role in the Minnesota church protest, taken into custody while covering the Grammys, and has been charged with conspiracy
Just at the
to
Grammys.
deprive rights. What is conspiracy to deprive rights? Well, conspiracy to deprive rights refers to a federal criminal offense under 18 U.S.C. 241, which makes it illegal for 2 or more persons to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate someone in the free expression of any right secured by the U.S. Constitution or federal laws. This statute applies to both private individuals and public officials and does not require the conspirators to act under the color of law, distinguishing it from 18 U.S.C. 242. Key elements include an agreement between two or more people. That was the group that he stormed the church. The intent to interfere with federally protected right, such as voting, equal protection, interstate travel, or due process, or in this
Yikes.
case, the right to practice freedom
Yeah.
of religion. No overt act is required to complete the crime, only the agreement and intent.
Yeah, so. And yeah, and like I said, because the guy asked him to leave, I think that's what's really going to get him in trouble. I don't know about 10 years, though. That's insane.
Penalties under
That just seems
Statute 241
extreme.
include up to 10 years in prison.
I mean, up to, obviously.
fines,
It's never
or
up
both.
to. Or it's never
Life
actually
imprisonment
when it's up
if
to.
something terrible happens, which it didn't. Now, this is originally enacted as part of the Enforcement Act in 1870 to combat the KKK. Just let that.
Don Lemon's going to do a year or two in prison. He's going to come out all iced out, just grilled out. Boys in the yard.
Sink in for a minute. Don Lemon
Year or two in prison, man.
faces
That'll change
a
you.
decade in prison. A black man,
Did a couple months in jail, and I came out and was like, things are
a
different.
black gay man, faces a decade in prison thanks to a law for the KKK. I mean, I know this video is going to be up early. It's going to be up at 8 a.m. before any of my normal viewers are online. But I can't imagine better news for everyone. Don Lemon arrested by federal agents in LA in the middle of covering the Grammys over Minnesota churches. It was like the extra humiliation. All right. To all the nothing ever happens people, I mean, look, I understand that people go, well, they're probably just going to let him off, whatever. Well, this is a federal charge.
Yeah.
This is not a charge that is easier to like
You're not going to get some lefty judge
easier
on this.
to just have some activist judge throw out. Don Lemon was arrested this morning after joining pro-immigration protesters who stormed a Minnesota church, the Daily Mail can now exclusively reveal. The former CNN anchor, 59, has been taken into federal custody over the incident that was filmed for his show at the city's church in St. Paul on January 18th. He has been charged with conspiracy to deprive rights with a violation of the FACE Act, interfering by force of someone's First Amendment rights. Before Don Lemon was arrested Thursday night, he attended the Grammys Recording Academy Honors Awards show in LA, where he
Look,
was
did he
pictured
fancied up his
alongside
name?
rapper Busta Rhymes. Well, something's gonna be busted. It's gonna be them cheeks.
Buster,
The
what are you
incident
doing?
that led to
hanging
Lemon's
out with
arrest
the Dodano?
unfolded earlier
Is that
this
what he
month
said?
as he filmed protesters oppose immigration and customs enforcement targeting a church because one of its pastors, David Eastwood, also leads the local ICE field office. Well, I don't care if you don't like ICE. They are allowed, ICE is allowed to go to church. This is a constitutionally protected right. They can go to church. They can do the same things you and I can. Protesters screamed, harassed worshipers during the incident, which sparked nationwide fury. In a statement from international news reader Don Lemon's attorney, Abe Lowell, following his arrest,
Really,
he
like they're threatening people at their jobs. They're invading hotels that they're staying at. Now they're in the churches. What's really left? There's their houses. I wonder if that's going to be next.
defended
I
the
don't want
storming
that
of the
to be
church in
next.
Minnesota as, quote,
But I hate
constitutionally
putting
protected.
that out in the ether,
But here's the
but
thing.
it might be true. 'Cause
One
nothing stops the left from doing crazy shit.
constitutionally protected right does not override another. Meaning, he says, well, I have freedom of speech, okay, but you don't have the freedom to impede other people's freedom of religion,
Actually, not.
right?
I think now that people are starting to get arrested and there's accountability, it'll slow down. It's because there wasn't accountability. People weren't getting arrested. That's why things have gotten so out of hand.
That's not how this works. International
Or they get
news
arrested
reader
and just get
Don
let
Lemon.
out the next day.
Don has been a journalist for 30 years and has been continually, and his constitutionally protected work in
60
Minneapolis
arrests.
was no different than what he has always done, the statement read. Has he always stormed churches? Now, if he had gone into a Kmart, right? If he had gone into a Kmart, or if he had gone, you know, I don't know, into a restaurant or into, which you might have trespassing charges there, but we're not talking about violations of the FACE Act. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists. Wrong. It does not exist to protect journalists, whose role is to shine a light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. This is no more important there is no more important time for people like Don Lemon to be doing this work. You mean harassing people at church? Oops. Oops. In his footage from storming the church, Don Lemon was seen arguing with the church pastor who called his antics shameless.
Crap.
Lemon insisted that his behavior was covered by the First Amendment, and he fumed to the pastor. There is a Constitution and a First Amendment and freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest. Yeah, but again, that does not supersede their freedom to assemble and practice religion. You know, that's so. I find that a lot of people will like scream, "I have freedom of speech. I have freedom of this, freedom of that." Blah, 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 blah. Well, okay,
right.
You do, but they also have the freedom to celebrate their religion. In Lemon's attorney statement on Friday, he hit out at federal investigators for charging him instead of investigating the federal agents who protected themselves against getting run over and getting attacked. The Trump Justice Department is devoting its time and attention and resources to arrest. That is a real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. The unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from the many cries facing this administration will not stand. Ooh, big words. Now, if Pam Blondie actually follows through on this, it will be probably the first time that... Now, I do think she handled, like, the Tesla lunatics. You know, the Tesla... she handled them okay. But this is a...
Has she done really... I haven't... I guess that's the only thing that I've heard positive about Pam Bondi. I don't even know who she is, really. She just kind of came out of nowhere. And seems like she's fumbled many times.
Different thing. This is about sending a message. You can't be storming into
Could be
people's
wrong.
churches.
I don't know, but seems like
just
it.
because you don't like where one of the people in that church works. That's not how these constitutionally protected rights work. And Don Lemon's First Amendment right does not supersede their rights. He concluded his statement by declaring Lemon will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court. Federal agents had previously expressed desire to charge Lemon under the FACE Act, which bans peoples or groups interfering in religious services. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Harmeet Dillon also floated charging Lemon under the KKK Act, which makes it illegal to threaten, hurt, or intimidate people to prevent them from exercising their civil rights. A federal judge in Minneapolis previously blocked attempts to bring those charges against Lemon. The broadcaster lives in New York with his husband, Tim Malone, who he married in 2024. They're not married. Lemon was fired from CNN back in April 2023 after his 17-year stint dragging down the network. He sparked fury 2 months before his dismissal while claiming women in their 40s were past their prime while discussing the prospects of the Republican presidential hopeful Nikki Haley.
All creep.
Since then, Lemon has set up a pathetic YouTube channel and brands himself as an independent journalist. It comes as it was revealed that the anti-ICE mob that Lemon joined chose to target that church because one of its pastors, David Easterwood, also serves as the acting director of St. Paul ICE Field Office. Easterwood, a pastor in the city's church in St. Paul, appeared to be alongside Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem back in October, where he spoke about being proud of leading the immigration crackdown in the town. At the protest while speaking with Lemon, protester Nekima Levy Armstrong, or Nekma, who was later arrested also for her role, singled Easterwood out as the reason they chose to overwhelm the church service. This will not stand. They cannot pretend to be in the house of God while harboring someone who is commanding ICE agents to protect our communities, Armstrong told Lemon. She also was arrested. This is a extraordinarily important arrest. We cannot have these lawless leftists be running completely unchecked.
Unchecked, yeah. I'm amazed
just
it's lasted
can't.
this long.
It's not how this works.
I'm to the point where I
And
just sit back and watch.
look,
I'm like,
you
yep.
may say Don
just
Lemon
kind
is
of expecting it.
ceremonial here. Sure. Fine by me. What about all the J6ers? Don Lemon should spend every year of that 10 years in prison and should be in solitary confinement the entire time.
I don't know.
Because that's how they treated the J6ers.
10 years.
Right?
I mean, yeah, well, they got 5.
That's how they treated the J6ers.
It's true. You guys did it to them.
I absolutely am so happy to bring this to you this early morning on Friday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like on it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
And the thing is, a lot of the J6ers, a lot of them were just walking in after the fact, like a couple hours afterwards. They still got arrested. I'm gonna die. And yeah, a lot of them got like several years in prison, solitary confinement, pretty awful conditions too. It was like, man, if you guys are gonna go that hard on the right, you gotta expect it right back from the other side. I'd expect the same thing if the right did it to the left. It's like, well, you right in the back. But yeah, you got to expect it back. If you're going to punch somebody, it's like, expect a swing back, you know? Yeah, that's crazy. I think 10 years is excessive. I don't know why it would be that much when a lot of the other sentences we see is just like, you know, how do you say it? That's online appropriate, child rapists, child R's. I've heard that. Yeah, they only get like a year or two. It's like, no, that's the type of thing which is like, it should be up there. And it's like, I get it. This is a pretty serious thing, but yeah, it said up to 10 years, and we always see that, but it's never actually that much. So we'll see how much he actually gets. But I do think the fact that he was asked to leave and he said, well, nope, not going to happen because it's part of my First Amendment right. It's like, that's where you got yourself into trouble there, bud. But all right, we'll see what I can find for more news this morning.